The lights had barely dimmed backstage at the Golden Globes when a quiet moment, missed by the main cameras, began sending shockwaves through Hollywood. Before you get comfortable, stay with this story until the very end, because the final detail is exactly why Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner are dominating global search trends right now. And if this story pulls you in, don't hesitate to react. Your engagement helps decide which exclusive celebrity moment we uncover next. Away from the red carpet spectacle, where perfectly timed smiles and rehearsed poses rule the night, the atmosphere behind the scenes told a different story. According to multiple insiders, Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner shared a private, unexpectedly intimate moment backstage at the Golden Globes. There were no flashing lights demanding attention, no publicists guiding their steps, just a brief interaction that instantly caught the attention of those nearby. Within minutes, whispers spread among crew members, planting the seed for a story that would soon travel far beyond the walls of the venue. Timothée Chalamet, the acclaimed actor celebrated for his emotional depth and enigmatic presence, appeared unusually calm yet focused that evening. Sources say that from the moment he arrived backstage, his attention was drawn less to the ceremony schedule and more to one person in particular. Kylie Jenner, global entrepreneur and cultural icon, was present without the exaggerated glamour often expected of her. Instead, she carried herself with understated elegance, blending into the environment while still commanding quiet attention. When their paths crossed, the energy in the room shifted. Timothee leaned in slightly, speaking to Kylie in a low voice, his expression soft but intent. Kylie responded with a subtle smile, one witnesses described as rare, genuine, and unguarded. It was the kind of expression that doesn't perform for an audience, but exists only in moments of comfort and trust. The exchange lasted only seconds, yet it was enough to leave a lasting impression on everyone who noticed. What made the moment even more compelling was its timing. It happened just before one of the most anticipated segments of the night. Backstage tension was rising, producers moving quickly, countdowns echoing faintly through headsets. In the middle of the controlled chaos, Timothee and Kylie seemed momentarily detached from it all. A light touch on the arm, eye contact held just a fraction longer than necessary, and a shared pause that suggested unspoken understanding. Public fascination with Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner has never been subtle. Every appearance, every gesture, every rumored interaction fuels massive online interest and high-volume search traffic. Yet this backstage moment at the Golden Globes felt different. It wasn't curated for headlines. It wasn't shaped for social media. It revealed a side of their connection that felt personal, prompting renewed speculation about the true nature and depth of their relationship. Midway through the night, one small detail elevated the story even further. As Timothee was called back toward the main stage, he stopped, turned slightly, and made a brief, almost imperceptible gesture toward Kylie. It wasn't a casual wave or a public signal, it was something quieter, more intentional. Kylie met his glance and gave a short nod, as if acknowledging a message that didn't need words. The moment passed instantly, but those who saw it recognized its significance. Cultural observers and entertainment analysts were quick to weigh in once word spread. In an industry driven by constant exposure, moments like these stand out precisely because they are unscripted. In an era of instant posts and public declarations, silence and subtlety often speak louder. It's no surprise that within hours of the Golden Globes ending, searches related to Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner surged worldwide. Notably, there was no official statement released afterward. No confirmation. No denial. The absence of commentary only intensified public curiosity. Social media platforms filled with slowed-down clips, insider recounts, and detailed interpretations of body language. Every glance was analyzed, every second replayed, turning a private interaction into a global conversation. The true payoff of this story, however, came from those who witnessed it firsthand. Veteran crew members reportedly exchanged knowing looks, or where they had just seen something rare, an authentic moment in a world often accused of being artificial. There was no scandal, no dramatic confrontation, just a glimpse of real emotion unfolding quietly behind the scenes. As the Golden Globes night came to a close and the venue emptied, that moment didn't fade. It followed audiences home, resurfacing in headlines, discussions, and trending topics. Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner may have said nothing, but their silence, and the intimacy of that backstage exchange, said enough. If this exclusive glimpse behind the curtain changed how you see Hollywood relationships, share your thoughts now. Do you believe this backstage moment signals a new chapter, or is it simply one meaningful piece of a much larger story? Stay tuned, because in Hollywood, the most powerful moments often happen when no one thinks the cameras are watching. What followed after that quiet exchange only deepened the intrigue. As Timothee stepped back into the spotlight, sources say Kylie remained backstage for a moment longer, watching the monitors with a composed expression that masked a swirl of emotion. To outsiders, it may have looked insignificant. But to those who understand the unspoken language of Hollywood relationships, it was anything but ordinary. This was not the behavior of two people sharing a casual acquaintance. It carried the weight of familiarity, comfort, and something carefully protected from public view. As the ceremony progressed, the contrast between what audiences saw on screen and what had unfolded moments earlier became striking. Timothee delivered his appearance with trademark confidence, yet observers who knew what had just happened backstage noticed subtle changes. A softer demeanor. A brief smile that appeared at unexpected moments. Small shifts in body language that suggested his mind was not entirely focused on the grandeur of the event, but on something more personal unfolding beyond the cameras. Meanwhile, backstage conversations continued to ripple outward. Staff members, publicists, and industry insiders quietly pieced together what they had seen. No one rushed to leak exaggerated claims. Instead, the story spread organically, fueled by consistency rather than sensationalism. Multiple accounts aligned on the same core details: the timing, the closeness, the unmistakable emotional tone of the interaction. In an industry notorious for exaggeration, this alignment only strengthened the credibility of the narrative. Kylie Jenner's presence at the Golden Globes had already attracted attention long before the ceremony began. As one of the most influential figures in modern pop culture, her every move generates intense scrutiny. Yet that night, she appeared intentionally low profile. According to sources, she declined several opportunities for staged photo moments, opting instead to remain mostly behind the scenes. This choice alone raised eyebrows, especially given how meticulously public appearances are usually curated at events of this scale. Entertainment analysts have since pointed out how strategic silence can be more powerful than any public statement. By saying nothing, both Timothee and Kylie allowed the moment to speak for itself. The absence of denial or clarification left room for interpretation, and that space quickly filled with curiosity, discussion, and speculation. Search engines reflected this instantly, with related keywords climbing rapidly as audiences worldwide searched for context, confirmation, and meaning. As the night wore on, another subtle detail emerged. Sources claim that later in the evening, after the most high-pressure segments had concluded, Timothee briefly returned backstage, not for professional reasons, but seemingly to reconnect. The interaction was even more understated this time. No extended conversation, no lingering gestures. Just a shared glance and a mutual understanding that whatever had been exchanged earlier didn't require repetition. Sometimes, the strongest connections are reinforced not through words, but through quiet acknowledgement. This restraint is what separates this story from typical celebrity gossip. There were no dramatic scenes, no visible conflict, no performative affection. Instead, the power of the moment lay in its simplicity. In a world where celebrity relationships are often defined by public displays and social media declarations, this felt refreshingly different. It suggested a bond that values privacy over publicity, intention over attention. By the following morning, entertainment outlets began carefully framing the story as an exclusive backstage moment rather than a breaking scandal. Headlines emphasized authenticity, intimacy, and subtlety. Fans responded strongly to this tone, with many expressing appreciation for seeing a more human side of two figures often placed on opposite ends of the cultural spectrum, Timothee as the introspective artist, Kylie as the business-driven media powerhouse. What makes this moment particularly compelling is how it challenges long-held assumptions. For years, public narratives have tried to simplify both of their identities. Yet backstage at the Golden Globes, those labels faded. What remained were two individuals navigating an intense environment while finding grounding in each other's presence. That context adds emotional depth to what might otherwise be dismissed as a fleeting interaction. Insiders also note that events like the Golden Globes are uniquely revealing. Behind the polished exterior lies immense pressure, career-defining moments, industry politics, and relentless observation. Choosing to share even a small personal moment in that setting speaks volumes. It suggests trust, emotional safety, and a deliberate choice to connect despite the risks of being seen. As discussions continue online, many fans have begun re-examining past appearances and timelines, searching for patterns they may have overlooked. While no new information has been officially confirmed, the renewed interest has reframed previous rumors in a different light. What once seemed speculative now feels more plausible, anchored by first-hand observations rather than anonymous claims. The enduring appeal of this story lies not in what was shown, but in what was withheld. In an age defined by oversharing, the decision to keep something private feels almost radical. That restraint has resonated deeply with audiences, transforming a brief backstage moment into one of the most talked about celebrity narratives of the season. As Hollywood moves on to its next big event, this story remains suspended in collective memory. Not because it was loud or dramatic, but because it was quiet and real. Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner did not announce anything, confirm anything, or deny anything. Yet through a series of small, authentic gestures, they reminded the world that sometimes the most powerful stories unfold where the cameras are not meant to look. And that is precisely why this moment continues to captivate. It wasn't designed to go viral. It wasn't meant to be dissected frame by frame. But in its honesty, it achieved something far more lasting, an emotional connection with audiences who recognize the truth behind the silence. As long as questions remain unanswered, the story will live on, fueled not by speculation alone, but by the undeniable impact of a single, genuine moment backstage at the Golden Globes. As days passed after the Golden Globes, the backstage moment did not fade, it evolved. Industry insiders began quietly contextualizing what they had witnessed, not as an isolated incident, but as part of a broader pattern that had gone largely unnoticed by the public. Subtle shifts in scheduling, overlapping appearances at private industry gatherings, and an increasing tendency for both Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner to avoid direct commentary suddenly felt more intentional than coincidental. Several Hollywood sources noted that this kind of discretion is rare at award season events, where visibility is currency. Every smile, every step, every interaction is usually calculated for maximum exposure. Yet that night, Timothee and Kylie appeared to move against the current. Their decision to keep their interaction behind the scenes, unamplified, undocumented, and unannounced, stood in sharp contrast to the culture surrounding them. That contrast is precisely what made the moment so powerful. Observers familiar with Timothee's career trajectory pointed out that he has always been selective about how much of his private life he allows into the public narrative. His artistic reputation has been built on emotional authenticity, often mirrored in his off-screen demeanor. What surprised many was how naturally Kylie fit into that quieter space. Known globally as a media-savvy entrepreneur who understands attention better than most, her choice to step back rather than forward spoke volumes. behind closed doors, conversations reportedly shifted from curiosity to recognition. Some insiders described the moment as grounding, others as deeply intentional. These descriptions matter because they reveal how those closest to the industry interpreted the interaction, not as fleeting chemistry, but as something rooted and deliberate. In Hollywood terms, that distinction changes everything. As online discussions intensified, fans began to articulate why the story felt different. Many commented that it didn't feel manufactured. There were no leaks framed for maximum shock value, no strategically timed paparazzi photos released afterward. Instead, the story grew slowly, driven by consistency and restraint. Each new account aligned with the last, reinforcing the same core emotional truth. From a media perspective, this kind of narrative is rare and highly valuable. It sustains attention without exhausting it. It invites curiosity without forcing conclusions. And most importantly, it allows audiences to feel like witnesses rather than consumers. That sense of emotional proximity is what kept search interest climbing days after the event, long after other Golden Globes headlines had cooled. Another layer of intrigue emerged when it became clear that neither Timothee nor Kylie's inner circles attempted to redirect the narrative. No anonymous close friend quotes dismissing the moment. No background briefings designed to minimize its importance. The silence felt unified, almost protective, reinforcing the idea that what happened backstage was meant to remain exactly what it was, private, but not hidden. Some entertainment journalists noted that this approach reflects a broader shift among high-profile figures. As audiences grow increasingly skeptical of performative intimacy, authenticity, even in its quietest form, has become the most compelling currency of all. In that context, the backstage moment at the Golden Globes didn't just spark curiosity, it resonated culturally. The emotional payoff for viewers and readers alike came from realizing that they were not being sold a story, they were being allowed to glimpse one. A real one. No exaggerated claims. No dramatic declarations. Just two people navigating an intense environment and choosing, briefly, to anchor themselves in each other's presence. As awards season continued, every subsequent appearance by either figure was viewed through a new lens. A pause before answering a question. A softened expression during interviews. Small details that may once have gone unnoticed now carried added weight. The backstage moment had quietly reframed the narrative. Yet despite the mounting attention, the core of the story remained unchanged. There was no escalation into spectacle. No sudden confirmation. No denial. The restraint held, and with it, the integrity of the moment. That discipline is what elevated the story beyond gossip and into something closer to modern celebrity mythology. Ultimately, the reason this moment continues to dominate discussion is simple. In an industry built on exposure, Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner reminded audiences of the power of privacy. They demonstrated that not every meaningful connection needs to be explained, labeled, or displayed. Sometimes, the most lasting impact comes from what is felt rather than shown. And so the story endures, not because of what was revealed, but because of what was left unsaid. A brief exchange backstage at the Golden Globes became a global conversation precisely because it resisted becoming one. In that resistance, it found its strength. In its silence, it found its voice. In the weeks that followed, the Golden Globes itself slowly slipped out of the headlines, but the backstage story did not. Instead, it took on a second life, one shaped not by official statements, but by the collective imagination of an audience hungry for authenticity. Entertainment editors noticed that articles mentioning Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner together were outperforming nearly every other awards season topic in terms of read time and engagement. People weren't just clicking. They were staying, rereading, and sharing. What kept the momentum alive was the absence of contradiction. No conflicting eyewitness accounts surfaced. No leaked footage suddenly appeared to challenge the narrative. In an era where nearly everything is captured, the lack of visual proof paradoxically made the story stronger. It forced the focus back onto emotion, intention, and interpretation, elements that cannot be easily edited or staged. Several longtime Hollywood publicists quietly admitted that moments like this are becoming increasingly rare. The modern celebrity ecosystem is optimized for visibility, yet overexposure has dulled its impact. Against that backdrop, the restrained interaction between Timothee and Kylie felt almost subversive. It suggested a conscious rejection of spectacle, a decision to protect something real in a space designed to commodify every second. Insiders also pointed out how carefully both careers are being navigated at this stage. Timothée Chalamet stands at a pivotal point, balancing critical acclaim with blockbuster expectations. Kylie Jenner, meanwhile, continues to evolve her public identity beyond reality television into something more controlled and selective. That convergence, two figures redefining their boundaries at the same time, gave the backstage moment additional weight. As analysts revisited the timeline of awards season, subtle consistencies emerged. Their movements never overlapped publicly in ways that felt forced, yet they were never far apart. No dramatic entrances together, no carefully staged exits. Just proximity without performance. To seasoned observers, this kind of alignment often signals intentional privacy rather than coincidence. The emotional core of the story continued to resonate because it mirrored a broader cultural desire. Audiences are increasingly drawn to narratives that feel grounded, human, and unscripted. In that sense, the Golden Globes backstage moment became symbolic, a reminder that even within one of the most polished industries on earth, genuine connection can still surface quietly. By the time entertainment magazines began publishing long-form reflections on the event, the framing had shifted entirely. This was no longer about rumors or speculation. It was about meaning. Writers focused on why such a small interaction could generate such a large response. The conclusion was consistent: people recognized sincerity when they saw it, even in fragments. Importantly, the story never crossed into invasion. There were no intrusive questions during interviews, no aggressive paparazzi follow-ups tied directly to that moment. The media, perhaps sensing the tone, handled it with unusual restraint. That mutual unspoken agreement between subjects, observers, and audiences allowed the narrative to remain intact rather than collapse under scrutiny. As time passed, the moment became less about confirmation and more about memory. A shared understanding that something genuine had occurred, even if its exact nature remained undefined. In Hollywood history, those are often the moments that endure the longest. Not because they were clarified, but because they were felt. The lasting impact of the backstage exchange lies in its contrast to expectation. At an event built on grand speeches and high-stakes visibility, the most powerful scene unfolded quietly, without applause. That inversion is what continues to draw people back to the story, long after newer headlines have emerged. Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner may never publicly address what happened behind the scenes that night. And perhaps they don't need to. The moment achieved something rare: it allowed the audience to witness authenticity without demanding explanation. In doing so, it reframed how celebrity intimacy can exist in public spaces. As the industry moves forward and attention shifts elsewhere, that brief Golden Globes backstage exchange remains a reference point. A reminder that the most compelling stories are not always the loudest, and that sometimes, a single quiet moment can echo louder than an entire red carpet. That is why this story continues to circulate. Not as gossip, not as spectacle, but as a modern Hollywood anecdote defined by restraint, subtlety, and emotional truth. And as long as those qualities remain rare, this moment, simple, fleeting, and genuine, will continue to hold its place in the collective conversation. Long after the immediate buzz settled, the backstage moment continued to be referenced in conversations that extended far beyond entertainment news. cultural commentators began using it as an example of how modern celebrity narratives are shifting away from spectacle and toward subtle emotional signals. In a landscape saturated with viral clips and instant reactions, this story stood out precisely because it resisted immediacy. It unfolded slowly, inviting reflection rather than demanding attention. Those close to the award circuit explained that backstage environments are often more revealing than red carpets. They are spaces where masks drop, even briefly, under the weight of pressure and exhaustion. That context made the interaction between Timothée Chalamet and Kylie Jenner even more telling. The Golden Globes is not a casual gathering, it is a high-stakes arena where careers, reputations, and future opportunities quietly intersect. Choosing that setting for a private, emotionally grounded moment was not accidental, it was instinctive. As weeks passed, entertainment writers began connecting this moment to a broader re-evaluation of celebrity intimacy. Audiences no longer respond as strongly to overt declarations or staged romance. Instead, they gravitate toward what feels real, understated, and unforced. The quiet exchange backstage fit that desire perfectly. It allowed people to project their own interpretations, making the story feel personal rather than prescribed. Interestingly, fan discussions revealed another layer. Many noted how the moment humanized both figures in unexpected ways. Timothée, often framed as the introspective artist, appeared emotionally present and grounded. Kylie, frequently portrayed as hyper-visible and media-driven, revealed a side marked by restraint and intentional silence. Together, they disrupted the simplified versions of themselves that often dominate headlines. From a media analytics standpoint, the story's longevity became impossible to ignore. Articles referencing the backstage interaction continued to rank high in search visibility weeks later. The reason was clear: the narrative did not resolve. It remained open-ended, allowing curiosity to persist without fatigue. In digital storytelling, that balance is rare and powerful. Another factor contributing to the story's endurance was its emotional neutrality. There was no scandal, no controversy, no moral angle to debate. Instead, it offered a moment of connection without demanding judgment. That neutrality invited a wider audience, fans, skeptics, and casual observers alike, to engage without defensiveness or cynicism. Industry veterans quietly acknowledged that this kind of narrative is often the most difficult to manage. Silence must be coordinated. Restraint must be mutual. One misplaced comment could have shifted the tone entirely. Yet nothing disrupted the balance. The absence of noise became part of the story itself, reinforcing the impression that what happened backstage was meaningful enough to protect. As time created distance from the event, the moment began to take on symbolic value. It represented a pause within an otherwise relentless cycle of visibility. A reminder that even at the highest levels of fame, private emotion still finds space to exist. That symbolism resonated deeply with audiences navigating their own public and private boundaries in an increasingly exposed world. In retrospectives of the Golden Globes, the backstage exchange was often mentioned not as a highlight, but as a footnote that lingered longer than expected. It did not define the ceremony, yet it outlasted many of its more dramatic elements. That endurance speaks to the power of subtle storytelling in an era dominated by extremes. What ultimately solidified the story's place in pop culture memory was its emotional clarity. Even without explicit confirmation, people understood what they were seeing: two individuals sharing a moment of calm and recognition amid chaos. That understanding required no explanation. It was intuitive, almost universal. Timothée Chalamet